Hi everybody, Holly here with a spiritual awakening video. And on this one, I wanted to talk a little bit about remembering what you are, not who you are, but what you are. And I think constantly coming back to that reminder and that knowing of what this experience as a human being on planet Earth actually is. And that can be an important part of our spiritual growth, coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back to that remembrance. It's something that we kind of need to practice, that we kind of need to remind ourselves continuously of what we are. So I think one of the most important parts about unraveling this "what am I?" question is to remember that we aren't our bodies and we aren't our minds, okay? We're having an experience in a human body. We're having an experience with a human mind. But what we really are is a soul, a spirit, an eternal aspect of consciousness. We aren't our body and we aren't our thoughts. We have thoughts and we have a body, but that isn't what we are. And that can be important to remember. We're going to exist after the body dissolves. We did exist before our body arrived. And we will even exist with or without our mind. I mean, think about it. You know, so many of us have loved ones who are experiencing dementia or experiencing some sort of inability to have normal thought processes, you know, with things like dementia. And that doesn't mean that that person isn't that person. Right? The person didn't disappear just because their thought process has disappeared. And so, you know, just another way of understanding that we aren't our thoughts. So what are we if we aren't our body and we aren't our thoughts? We are a focal point of consciousness on this vast ocean of consciousness. So when we even think about, well, what are we in spirit? A lot of times it seems like maybe our understanding might be misconstrued in terms of thinking that we are a soul. And so what is a soul? Well, it's like a ghost. It's this person that doesn't have a body. That's not what you are either. You are a focal point of consciousness. All of consciousness. And so often in spiritual conversations, we talk about all is one, and that's what we mean. Consciousness is consciousness. And Holly, or you, I happen to be a focal point of consciousness right now, experiencing the physicality and the emotionality and the thought processes of this particular human experience. Okay, so if I am nothing but a focal point of consciousness, then that can be important in terms of remembering that consciousness is always expanding and moving and shifting and experiencing change. And so one of the thought experiments that I like to think about is picking any sort of object and understanding how that object hasn't always been what that object is. So for example, I'm going to pick up my coffee cup here, my teacup. And so this cup, okay, if we think about it, it's ceramic, right? And so before it was this cup, it was some sort of lump of clay, of ceramic material. But that isn't where it started. If we can go back even further, well, then it was some sort of mineral in the ground, and someone had to pull it out of the ground and conglomerate it and clean it and sift it and put it together for the potter to be able to use it to make the cup. Before it was some sort of material in the ground that was clay, it was some sort of rock or some sort of dirt or sand or some other kind of material in the landscape. And before it was that, then it was probably some sort of dust particles in the air of some sort that then landed on top of the earth to then be created eventually as clay. And so we can begin to see how far back we can go and all the different shapes that this cup has taken. And I like to think about that in terms of understanding how my focal point of consciousness, this is what I really am, is also going to shift and change over time. For this brief period, hopefully 100 years of a human lifetime as Holly, then my focal point of consciousnness will be all of the human experiences, the experience as a baby, as a child, as a young adult, as an older adult, as a zygote in my mother's womb, as a corpse in a casket. My focal point of consciousness will get to have this entire span, but it's always will have been shifting and changing throughout this lifespan. My focal point of consciousness was also always shifting and changing before I was the zygote, and will be after I'm no longer in the corpse experience in this human life. So the overall moral to the story is, don't have a white knuckle grip on what you are right now, and to think that things must stay the same. You aren't your body, you aren't your thoughts, you're a focal point of consciousness on the vast sea of consciousness, which is always shifting and moving. Be in the moment of pure consciousness, experiencing the moment in the perfect miracle that is you right now, at this moment. Thank you for listening.